The proximity alarm blared through Isaac Barton's helmet, warning of the approaching storm front, but he simply waved his hand dismissively at the holographic display as he continued his mineral extraction from the jagged rock face. "Relax, Menoxx. The sensors must be malfunctioning again." This is nothing compared to Winterback in Minnesota. The lanky alien beside him twitched nervously, all 6 of his eyes blinking in rapid succession. His exosuit's thermal indicators were flashing urgent warnings across his visor. "Isaac, this is not a malfunction. The Vexorian Atmospheric Analyzer is the most sophisticated weather prediction technology in 3 galactic sectors," Menoxx insisted, his voice translated through the comm system with a slight electronic buzz. "The storm will reach critical levels in approximately 27 minutes. We must return to the base immediately." Isaac chuckled as he hefted another crystalline sample into his collection case. "Look around us. It's barely -15 degrees Celsius with some wind. Where I'm from, we call this a mild winter afternoon. Hell, I used to walk to school in worse." Menoxx's skin shifted from its normal pale blue to an anxious purple. As the xenogeology instructor assigned to train the first human exchange student at the prestigious Vexorian Science Academy, he felt personally responsible for Isaac's safety. The human had been nothing but trouble since arriving on Tundros IV 3 lunar cycles ago. The Academy Protocol clearly states, "The Academy Protocol was written for Vexorians," Isaac interrupted, tapping his gloved hand against his chest. "I'm human. Different physiology, different tolerances. Trust me, this is nothing." A gust of wind swept across the icy plain, strong enough to make Menoxx stumble. His 3rd set of arms extended reflexively to stabilize himself. "The Tundrosian storms are not like Earth weather, Isaac. They carry microscopic ice particles that can penetrate protection seals and—" "Fine," Isaac sighed, snapping his collection case closed. "We'll head back, but I'm noting in my report that we cut the expedition short unnecessarily." As they trudged across the frozen landscape toward their rover, Isaac couldn't help but feel disappointed. He'd fought hard for this placement on Tundros IV, the first human ever accepted to the exclusive Vexorian exchange program. The mineral samples he was collecting could revolutionize Earth's understanding of crystalline formation in extreme environments. The rover stood 100 meters away, its stabilizing anchors already automatically deployed against the increasing winds. The skies above had taken on a strange greenish hue that Isaac had to admit he'd never seen on Earth. "See, we have plenty of time," Isaac said, gesturing at the rover. "Your weather systems are calibrated for Vexorian safety margins, not human ones." Menoxx's translator struggled to convey his frustrated clicking sounds. "The Academy entrusted me with your safety. If you were to be injured due to my negligence," a deafening crack split the air, cutting off Menoxx's words. Isaac turned to see a massive fissure opening in the ice behind them, a jagged line racing across the surface like lightning. Before either could react, the ground beneath them lurched violently. "Run," Menoxx shouted, shoving Isaac forward with surprising strength. Isaac didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward the rover, his boots struggling to find purchase on the increasingly unstable surface. The wind had intensified dramatically, and tiny ice particles were now visibly swirling around them, glinting like diamond dust in the fading light. They were 20 meters from the rover when the ice shelf beneath them gave way completely. Isaac felt the ground disappear, and suddenly he was falling, tumbling through frigid air. He caught a glimpse of Menoxx's flailing form beside him before they both crashed onto a lower ice shelf 10 meters below. The impact knocked the breath from Isaac's lungs. His helmet struck the ice hard, and warning indicators flashed across his visor. A sharp pain shot through his left leg as he tried to stand. "Menoxx," he gasped, searching frantically for his instructor. A few meters away, the Vexorian was struggling to right himself. One of his 6 arms hung at an unnatural angle, and fluid the color of indigo was leaking from a tear in his exosuit. "I am functional," Menoxx managed, though his voice through the calm sounded strained. "My exosuit integrity is compromised. Internal temperature regulators are failing." Isaac limped over to him, wincing at the pain in his leg. "We need to get to shelter. The rover's out of reach now." Above them, the sky had darkened to an ominous swirl of green and black. The wind howled with increasing ferocity, driving ice particles against their suits with the force of tiny bullets. Isaac's external temperature gauge was dropping rapidly. "There is a research outpost 3 kilometers east," Menoxx said, pointing with one of his undamaged arms. "Emergency protocols dictate 3 kilometers it is," Isaac said, helping Menoxx to his feet. "Can you walk?" "My locomotive functions are operational," the alien replied, though he swayed unsteadily. "Your leg appears damaged," Isaac grimaced. "Pretty sure it's broken, but the suit's compression system is helping. We need to move now." They began their desperate journey across the fractured ice field, the storm intensifying with every passing minute. Isaac's earlier bravado had evaporated completely as the reality of their situation became clear. This was nothing like Minnesota winters. The storm was like a living entity, seemingly intent on their destruction. "I should have listened to you," Isaac admitted as they struggled against the wind. "This isn't just bad weather, it's something else." Menoxx didn't respond immediately, focused on maintaining his balance while scanning the horizon. Tundrosian weather patterns involve complex interactions between the planet's 3 moons and its unusual magnetic field. The resulting storms contain properties not found on Earth. Isaac's suit sensors were going haywire, some failing altogether as ice particles penetrated the external layers. The pain in his leg had intensified to a throbbing agony, and he suspected the break was worse than he initially thought. "How much farther?" he asked through gritted teeth. "Approximately 2 kilometers," Menoxx replied. "My navigation systems are degrading rapidly." The wind suddenly shifted, nearly knocking them both off their feet. Isaac grabbed Menoxx's good arm to steady him, noticing with alarm that the alien's normally vibrant skin had dulled to a pale gray. "Your body temperature is dropping dangerously," Isaac said, checking the bioreadings that his suit could still detect from Menoxx's damaged exosuit. "Vexorians can't handle extreme cold like humans can." "An ironic observation," Menoxx managed, his voice weaker. "Given our current predicament," they pressed on, each step more difficult than the last. The landscape had transformed into a nightmarish blur of ice and wind. Isaac's helmet was accumulating a layer of frost that his defoggers couldn't keep up with, limiting his visibility to just a few meters ahead. "Isaac," Menoxx said suddenly, his voice alarmingly faint, "if I cannot continue, you must proceed without me." "The outpost has communication equipment to signal for rescue." "Not happening," Isaac replied firmly. "We're both getting there." A massive gust of wind slammed into them, sending them sprawling onto the ice. Isaac felt something tear in his injured leg and couldn't suppress a cry of pain. Beside him, Menoxx lay motionless. "Menoxx," Isaac crawled to his instructor, fear gripping him. "Menoxx, get up." The alien's eyes fluttered, only 2 of the 6 still responsive. "Cannot maintain consciousness, core temperature, critical." Isaac made a split-second decision. He activated the emergency power diversion in his suit, channeling additional energy to his heating elements. Then he carefully positioned himself next to Menoxx, pulling the alien close to share the enhanced heat output. "This is going to drain my suit power faster," Isaac explained, "but it should keep you alive until we reach the outpost." "Unwise," Menoxx murmured, "sacrificing your safety." "Consider it payback for not listening to your warnings," Isaac replied, helping Menoxx to his feet again. "Now let's move. I don't think either of us can afford another rest." With renewed determination, they continued their desperate journey. Isaac's suit power levels dropped steadily, the additional heating drain taking its toll. His injured leg threatened to give out with each step, but he forced himself forward, half-carrying Menoxx, whose condition was deteriorating rapidly. The storm reached a terrifying intensity, the wind now strong enough to lift sheets of ice into the air around them. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, forcing Isaac to rely on the increasingly unreliable directional indicator in his helmet. "There," Menoxx suddenly exclaimed, pointing with a trembling arm. "Outpost beacon." Through the swirling ice, Isaac could just make out a faint blue light blinking in the distance. Relief surged through him, giving him a final burst of energy. "Just a little further," he encouraged Menoxx, whose steps had become sluggish and uncoordinated. The outpost materialized from the storm like a mirage, a low, dome-shaped structure anchored to the ice with massive pylons. Isaac practically dragged Menoxx the final 50 meters, his own strength nearly exhausted. They reached the entrance, and Isaac fumbled with the external access panel. His gloved fingers felt numb and clumsy as he input the emergency access code that all Academy personnel were required to memorize. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of hydraulics, the outer door slid open. Isaac pulled Menoxx inside, and the door sealed behind them with a reassuring thud, instantly silencing the howling storm. They collapsed in the decontamination chamber, both barely conscious as the automated systems began cycling. Warm air flooded the chamber, and Isaac felt the ice crystals on his suit begin to melt. "We made it," he whispered to Menoxx, whose eyes had closed completely. "Stay with me, Professor, we made it." The inner door opened automatically once the decontamination cycle completed, revealing the outpost's main chamber. It was small but equipped with all the essentials: communications array, medical station, and emergency supplies. Isaac summoned his last reserves of strength to drag Menoxx to the medical station, carefully removing the alien's damaged exosuit. Vexorian physiology was part of the required reading for his exchange program, but actual medical intervention was well beyond his training. Fortunately, the station's medical system was automated. Isaac activated the Vexorian diagnosis protocol and watched anxiously as scanner beams passed over Menoxx's still form. "Severe hypothermia detected," the system announced in a neutral voice. Administering thermal restoration therapy and cellular stabilizers. A transparent dome extended over Menoxx, and the air beneath it began to shimmer with heat. Colored fluids flowed through tubes that connected automatically to ports in Menoxx's skin. Only when he was sure that Menoxx was receiving treatment did Isaac finally attend to his own injuries. He removed his helmet and exosuit with difficulty, wincing as the movement jarred his leg. The medical scanner confirmed what he already knew: a compound fracture of his tibia. Administering pain management and initiating bone stabilization procedure. The system informed him as a separate medical dome enclosed his leg. As the pain medication took effect, Isaac felt the adrenaline drain from his system, leaving him exhausted beyond measure. He activated the emergency beacon that would alert the Academy to their location and situation, then slumped back onto the medical couch. Outside, the storm raged with undiminished fury, battering the outpost with winds that occasionally made the entire structure shudder. The safety of the outpost made the storm's power even more apparent. Isaac couldn't believe he had dismissed it so casually just hours ago. He drifted in and out of consciousness as the medical system worked on his leg. When he finally came fully awake, he was surprised to see Menoxx sitting up on the adjacent couch, all 6 eyes open, and his skin returned to its normal blue hue. "You're okay," Isaac said with relief. "Thanks to your actions, yes," Menoxx replied. "The medical system reports that your intervention prevented permanent cellular damage to my thermal regulation organs." Isaac attempted to sit up, but was gently restrained by the medical dome still working on his leg. "How long was I out?" "Approximately 7 hours," Menoxx said. "The storm has not abated. In fact, it has intensified to a Category 5 Tundrosian cyclone, the most severe classification. Isaac stared at the reinforced windows, now completely obscured by swirling ice and snow. I've never seen anything like it. I was an idiot to compare this to Earth weather. Your ignorance was understandable if dangerous, Menoxx said, his tone surprisingly gentle. Humans have not experienced Tundrosian weather patterns before, however, dismissing established safety protocols was unwise. That's putting it mildly, Isaac admitted. I nearly got us both killed because I was too stubborn to listen. Menoxx moved to a monitoring station, checking the outpost systems with practiced efficiency. The Academy has received our distress signal. However, rescue operations cannot commence until the storm subsides, which meteorological projections suggest will be at least 3 standard days from now. 3 days, Isaac's eyes widened. The outpost has supplies for that long, right? The facility is equipped to sustain 6 Vexorian researchers for 15 days, Menoxx confirmed. Our immediate survival is not at risk. Isaac nodded, relieved. The medical dome above his leg retracted, revealing a lightweight stabilizing field that surrounded the injured limb. Bone fusion process 23% complete, the system announced. Estimated completion time, 46 hours. Mobility will be limited until process completes. Guess I'm not going anywhere soon anyway, Isaac said, carefully sitting up. The pain in his leg had reduced to a dull ache. Menoxx, I want to apologize, properly. My arrogance put both our lives at risk. The Vexorian instructor considered him with an unreadable expression, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence, a gesture that Isaac had learned indicated deep thought. In my 17 cycles as an instructor, I have observed that theoretical knowledge rarely compares to experiential learning, Menoxx finally said. You now understand Tundrosian weather in a way that no classroom lecture could convey. That's a very generous way of saying I learned my lesson, Isaac replied with a weak smile. However, Menoxx continued, his tone firmer, such lessons need not come at the risk of life. The Academy selected you for this exchange because of your exceptional academic record and your potential to bridge understanding between our species. That potential is diminished if you perish on your first field expedition. Isaac nodded solemnly. Message received, loud and clear. Over the next 2 days, as they waited out the storm, Isaac and Menoxx fell into an unexpectedly comfortable routine. The outpost was well equipped with research materials and data terminals, allowing Menoxx to continue Isaac's education despite their isolation. Isaac was surprised to discover that Menoxx was considered something of a maverick among Vexorian instructors. While most of his peers focused solely on technical proficiency, Menoxx believed in teaching the philosophical and cultural contexts of scientific knowledge. Science without cultural understanding leads to exactly the kind of misapprehension you demonstrated, Menoxx explained as they analyzed the storm's patterns on the outpost's monitoring equipment. You understood the technical metrics of Tundrosian weather, but lacked the cultural framework to properly interpret their significance. Isaac watched the swirling patterns on the display with newfound respect. On Earth, we've engineered our way around most extreme weather. We build structures that can withstand hurricanes, shelters for tornadoes. I guess I assumed any advanced civilization would do the same. An understandable assumption, Menoxx said, manipulating the display to show a 3-dimensional model of the planet. But Vexorian philosophy differs fundamentally from human approaches. We do not seek to conquer natural forces, but to understand and accommodate them. The model highlighted vast regions of the planet that remained uninhabited despite being resource-rich. These areas experience weather patterns too volatile even for our engineering capabilities. Rather than attempting to occupy them regardless, we simply accept these limitations. Humans would probably see that as giving up, Isaac admitted. We tend to view nature as something to be overcome. A perspective that has served your species well in many contexts, Menoxx acknowledged, but one that nearly proved fatal on Tundros IV. By the third day, the storm finally began to show signs of weakening. Isaac's leg was nearly healed, the advanced medical technology having accelerated the bone fusion process far beyond what would have been possible on Earth. Rescue vessels are launching from the Academy, Menoxx announced, reviewing the incoming communications. They will reach our location in approximately 4 hours. Isaac stood carefully, testing his weight on the healed leg. It felt surprisingly good with only a slight tenderness remaining. Just in time. I was starting to get tired of emergency rations. Menoxx's skin rippled with blue patterns, the Vexorian equivalent of laughter. I must admit, I find human emergency nutrition even less palatable than our own. As they prepared for evacuation, gathering the limited research data they had managed to collect before the storm hit, Isaac found himself reflecting on the experience. You know, despite everything, I've learned more in these 3 days than in the entire month since I arrived, he said. Not just about the weather, but about Vexorian perspectives. Perhaps there is something to be said for experiential learning after all, Menoxx replied, his tone lighter than Isaac had ever heard it. Though I would prefer future lessons to involve less physical peril. Agreed, Isaac said fervently. When we get back, I want to revise my research proposal. Instead of focusing solely on mineral formation, I'd like to study how Vexorian adaptive strategies might be applied to human settlement challenges. Menoxx's eyes widened in surprise. An interesting shift in focus. The Academy might find such comparative research valuable. The outpost's sensors detected the approaching rescue vessels before they became visible through the clearing storm. As they gathered by the entrance, waiting for evacuation, Isaac found himself strangely reluctant to leave. This place nearly killed us, he mused, looking around the small outpost. But it also changed my entire perspective. That is the true purpose of the exchange program, Menoxx said. Not merely to share technical knowledge, but to expand perspectives in ways that benefit both our species. The rescue team arrived with impressive efficiency, a group of 4 Vexorians in pristine environmental suits who seemed surprised to find both Isaac and Menoxx in relatively good condition. We expected more severe injuries based on your exposure duration, the team leader said as they escorted them to the transport vessel. The human demonstrated unexpected resilience, Menoxx replied, and resourcefulness. As the transport rose above the outpost, Isaac got his first clear view of the landscape since the storm began. What had been a relatively flat ice field was now completely transformed. Massive ice formations had been sculpted by the wind, creating an alien topography of breathtaking beauty and complexity. It's incredible, he breathed, pressing close to the viewport. The storm created all this. Creation and destruction are often the same process viewed from different perspectives, Menoxx said, joining him at the window. The storm that nearly killed us has created new research opportunities for future expeditions. Back at the Academy, Isaac and Menoxx were subjected to thorough medical examinations despite their protests that the outpost's facilities had already addressed their injuries. The Academy's administration was taking no chances with the first human exchange student. Your actions were reckless and contrary to explicit safety protocols, the Academy's director, a venerable Vexorian named Zelter, admonished Isaac during their formal debriefing. However, Instructor Menoxx has submitted a rather unusual evaluation of your performance. Isaac glanced at Menoxx in surprise. While the student's initial judgment was severely flawed, Menoxx stated formally, his subsequent actions demonstrated exceptional adaptability, crisis management, and cross-species collaboration. These qualities are precisely what the exchange program was established to foster. The director's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession. You recommend that student Barton be allowed to continue the program. With additional safety training, yes, Menoxx confirmed. And I request to continue as his primary instructor. 2 weeks later, Isaac found himself back on the icy surface of Tundros IV, this time properly equipped and with a newfound respect for the planet's weather systems. Menoxx stood beside him, both of them collecting samples from the new formations created by the storm. Temperature dropping 2 degrees, Menoxx noted, checking his instruments. Wind velocity increasing. Isaac immediately began packing up his equipment. That's our cue to head back then. Menoxx's skin rippled with blue patterns of amusement. No argument this time, no comparisons to Earth weather. I've learned my lesson, Isaac said seriously. Some things you have to experience to truly understand. As they loaded their samples into the rover, a light snow began to fall around them, gentle and almost beautiful, nothing like the deadly storm they had survived. You know, Isaac said, looking up at the swirling flakes, back home, this would be considered perfect weather for ice fishing. Menoxx froze, all 6 eyes focusing on him with alarm. Isaac laughed and clapped the alien on his upper shoulder. That was a joke, Professor. I promise I'm not suggesting we stay out here any longer than scheduled. Human humor continues to elude me, Menoxx sighed, but there was a hint of amusement in his voice. As the rover carried them back toward the safety of the Academy base, Isaac reflected on how dramatically his perspective had changed. He had come to Tundros IV believing that his human resilience made him somehow superior, that he could ignore warnings meant for supposedly more fragile species. Instead, he had learned that true resilience came not from fighting against nature, but from understanding and respecting its power. It was a lesson he would carry back to Earth eventually, along with his research findings and newfound appreciation for Vexorian philosophy. The storm forecast for next week indicates conditions suitable for an expedition to the northern magnetic anomaly, Menoxx mentioned as they approached the base. If you're interested, definitely, Isaac replied. But this time, if you say we need to turn back, I promise I'll listen. Progress indeed, Menoxx said, his skin rippling with patterns of approval. Perhaps there is hope for interspecies understanding after all. The base loomed ahead, its sturdy construction a testament to Vexorian engineering adapted to work with rather than against the planet's harsh conditions. Isaac knew now that this approach wasn't a limitation but a sophisticated response to forces too powerful to control, a lesson humanity itself might need to learn as they expanded further into the galaxy. You know what I've realized, Isaac said as they prepared to dock the rover. On Earth, we've spent centuries trying to conquer nature. Here, you've spent centuries learning to dance with it. An apt metaphor, Menoxx replied, though I must point out that Vexorians lack the physical flexibility for what humans call dancing. Isaac laughed. Another metaphor to add to your collection, then. As they entered the base, leaving the growing storm outside, Isaac felt a profound gratitude for the lesson he'd learned and for surviving long enough to appreciate it. What he had dismissively called a mild winter afternoon had nearly cost him his life, but it had also given him something far more valuable, a new way of seeing the universe and his place within it. The next expedition will require specialized training, Menoxx was saying as they removed their environmental suits. The magnetic anomaly creates unique challenges for our equipment and potentially for human physiology. I'll study the briefing materials thoroughly, Isaac promised. And I'll follow every safety protocol to the letter. Menoxx's 6 eyes regarded him with what Isaac had come to recognize as approval. Then perhaps, Student Barton, you are learning after all. Outside, the winds of Tundros IV began to rise again, but within the safety of the base, Isaac listened to their howl with newfound respect rather than dismissal. Some forces weren't meant to be conquered, only understood, respected, and when necessary, sheltered from. It was a lesson he would never forget, one cold afternoon at a time.